Your mental health is your dopest self, but you don't have to tend to it by yourself. Get a tribe, get inspired, and you'll get ahead. Get someone to talk to, don't keep it bottled in. You're beautifully human, you should remember this. So it's okay for you to feel emotions. At times we all need to clear our heads, and when you do, just holler at Therapy by Meg.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Discuss with Meg Duke. I am, of course, your host, Meg Duke, and I am thrilled and excited to introduce another guest this week. It's going to be so wonderful. She is actually my very first lead supervisor, my first role outside of grad school. And of course, I'm going to ask her how we know each other, but she's just been absolutely fantastic. She's another person where I was like, I need you to write an interview an introduction, because if I start rambling about how amazing you are, it's going to be really embarrassing. So I'm so excited to welcome you all. Jessica Skinner. She's an LCSW just like I am. She specializes in providing services to children and adolescents. Her preferred modality is cognitive behavior therapy and solution-focused therapy, which you will hear me talk a lot about solution-focused therapy as these podcasts roll on. She's worked with children and adolescents with various diagnoses, including ADHD, anxiety, and depression. She has a personalized approach to her clients and guides them on their journey in personal growth. Jessica graduated from University of California at Berkeley in 2004 with her bachelor's in social welfare. And then she went on to graduate in 2006 from Columbia University in New York City with her master's in social work. She's been a licensed clinical social worker. She's been a licensed social worker in Texas since 2006 and has worked with as a psychotherapist for Dallas School District since 2008. She believes that mental health is just as important as physical health. Don't we all? We should, right? There's that word should. And you can't have one without the other. So her hope is that we end the stigma for receiving mental health treatment, and you don't have to suffer in silence, and that there's no shame in seeking help. So with that, with no more further ado, let me welcome in Miss Jessica Skinner.
Hello.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome.
Hello.
I just got done doing your introduction. I'm so happy to have you here and cannot wait to dive into whatever our discussion is. So the first thing I like to ask everybody is, how do we know each other?
No, Lord, that's a long story. But I think it was like 2012 or 13.
Mm-hmm. We were both working at Redacted. We were working at a psychiatric
hospital.
That is correct. Yes.
And I remember that you came in so happy to work there, and I felt so bad for you because it was so bad. And our boss at the time, which is another subject, another day, but it's like he had just basically demoted one of our therapists, but you thought it was a promotion, and you came and congratulated her and hugged her on her promotion.
I did that.
And then
I remember that moment so well. And I remember you and Steve. I should have Steve come on. Oh, he's great. And Steve turned and looked. You both were kind of like massive eyeballs. No. And I was like, yeah, congrats. That's so exciting. They're moving you over to the PICU. Unit 1.
No. That's what you wanted. And no, it isn't.
Oh, wow. Yeah. I guess I have suppressed that moment, but I do remember it now that you mentioned it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that is me, right?
That's my first memory of you. It's like you came with such a ball of energy, and we were just like, why are you so happy?
I was fresh out of grad school and had the dream of what social work could be. And I hadn't really had, and I had 2 ridiculously amazing field placements. So I was prepared.
So bad.
I was clinically prepared because I learned so much and had such great experiences, but I was ill prepared for kind of the politics and the social structures of working in an agency or in a hospital. Yeah.
No, and it was it was a great hospital.
Yeah. Redacted.
Yeah, it was the beginning of a miserable series. No,
Yes, but
anyway.
you know what though? I've said this before, and as I obviously said it when I was director of clinical services at another hospital, because I was trying to entice people to come work for me. But I mean it though. I don't think you really get any better clinical experience to set you up for your clinical exam and just to feel kind of a breadth of information than you do in a psych hospital. You see so many different people from different situations with different diagnoses and different family structures.
Every single day.
Every single day is something different. And
That's true. I
as
loved my first experience working in a psych hospital when I was in intake. It was like I was, like you, baby social worker, and it was like exciting because you got to know so many different people. But
yes,
then you get into the politics, and that's not so much fun. But
yeah, and I know
the patients have always been great.
yes, yeah, and I know the politics really are there. That's outside of social work too. It's not like it's just. I know everyone experiences that in their industries, but yeah, it was. I do very much remember coming in and just being so excited, and that's just like my energy of like I'm so happy to be here. And it's like, oh, I'm just gonna bring it down a little bit.
Yeah. And
Okay.
then you got engaged that same year, so you're all forgiven.
Yes. Oh, that's right. That's very true. I had just moved to Texas. So I literally pieced out of Indianapolis like the day that I could leave, drove down, and then I started working at the hospital like the minute I could take my LMSW, which is a whole other story in itself, where I had to like take it down in Tyler, Texas, because you just couldn't get a spot to take the exam. So I had to be a waitress for a month and a half. It was a whole thing. Yeah.
I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah.
So yeah, see?
Yeah. Crazy.
So that's why you were so happy.
Yes. And I was like, finally, I can finally work. Not that being a waitress also was not, and that talk about a learning experience, but you learn a lot. Absolutely. Yeah. Quick on your feet too. Anyway, so what are we talking about today?
Motherhood and our identities, and how nobody tells us that everything drastically changes as soon as the baby comes out.
It's so like, true.
Woo!
It's so true. And I know you had your pronouns on it, and I don't know where they went, but they're gone, but that's fine. But so I do like to I always like to say again and remind everybody that you identify as a woman, that you had the she, her, aya. I've got my she, her, hers up. We identify as mothers, as moms, as mamas. So if you hear us saying mom, then that's our moniker that we choose. But obviously this applies to parents, to birth parents, to adoptive parents, all of that. It's a very inclusive conversation. It's just she and I are going to have a conversation as moms.
Yeah. And now there they are, I think.
Okay, there they are. They're popped up.
I don't know what happened, but okay.
Technology, my friend. We're all going to get there.
I know. It's like this pandemic really pushed us into it. Like we had to.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I had planned on when I moved to Kansas to did virtual anyway, because I just remembered in Houston, especially in Houston, traffic and Kansas City, air quotes, traffic are not the same thing. But I just remembered thinking like, I'm just not going to get an office. I'm not going to pay rent, and I'm not going to have to worry about people getting stuck in traffic or wrecks or anything. And then of course the pandemic hit, and it was like, oh no, you will do virtual. Like that's
yeah. It's not an option.
Kind of like a novel approach to therapy, even still in 2020. And then now it's like, no, we're good. We got it. It's good.
I know. It's like I think it's nice. It's at least it allows for us to be able to see people that we weren't able to because of transportation or whatever, or just have these meetings that you used to travel for. Like that's insane now when you can just get on.
Yes, absolutely. And there are certainly downfalls. One of the problems I had in my last role was people would just squeeze in a Zoom meeting into the tiny little wedges of time that you had in your day. So it was like, can I go pee? Or no, you just want my entire day to be so whereas it was nice to be able to like get up and move around and the water conversations being gone, but all other things being equal, being able to be safe and not have to wear a mask and have a conversation, and just the logistics are really nice. So yeah, but we're good now. Our she's are up and we're ready to go. And of course the people who are listening on the podcast are like, none of us can see this anyway, we don't care.
That's true. I forgot about them peoples.
Yeah. Anyway, so I know it's so interesting. And I've seen a lot of these memes. I'm obviously pretty active on my Instagram on Therapy by Meg, but I see a lot of these memes about like when you're pregnant, everyone's like, oh, you look so wonderful, or how are you, or you look puffy and sweaty, or whatever they're going to tell you.
Are you sure there's just one baby in there? Really?
uh, I have so many. Yeah. And the good news about the pandemic, though, being pregnant in pandemic, is that no one tried to touch my belly. I'll tell you that. Like, it's like, you actually bought me my belly book with Trace, my first one, and I got the same one for my second. And there's a question in there that's like, how many people try to touch your belly? And I'm like, none. We're in a pandemic. But it's funny because we really go from this focus on the mom, on the person who's pregnant, who's going to give birth. And then immediately that baby pops out and it's like, how's the baby? Where's the baby? How's the baby sleeping? How's the baby eating? What's the baby look like?
Yeah, never mind that you cut open or whatever,
Right.
It's like, what about the baby? But I know that especially in Hispanic culture, like for me, I'll speak for my family, like
Sure.
they always take care of you when you're pregnant. It's always like, feed me. What if you want something like a cheeseburger, somebody will go out and get it. Well, since my husband and I are alone here, I didn't have that experience. So it was kind of isolating for me. Both pregnancies were. And so the whole, my identity was lonely. Like it was like I became a mom, but in such isolation. It's hard to describe, but it's like I felt isolated and with nobody to help.
Right.
And so it was just really weird because, growing up, you would see pregnant women all the time and they would get all these women to help, even if they weren't family, because, we're Hispanic, we're going to feed everybody and their mamas. And so when the baby is born, yes, the whole thing dynamics changes to focus on the baby and everything's about the baby, and we kind of tend to forget about us. And I think that's the beginning of when we kind of lose ourselves, right? Like when that baby comes out. And I know for me in 2016 when my daughter was born, she's 5 now, but when she was born, like I swear I cannot remember 2016. Like I don't remember the events that happened in 2016. She was a very, like, they said colic. I don't think it was, because it wasn't like she had a whole lot of gas or, like acid reflux. She didn't do all of that typical stuff, but she cried for some reason. This girl cried and cried and cried and cried and cried and cried. And even my mother-in-law would be like, yeah, it's not normal. And to hear that, it's like something's wrong with my baby and you're stressing out. And I was like, oh my God. But yeah, so nobody tells you those things. Like, of course, a baby's gonna cry.
Sure.
But,
of course.
But
right, but there's a difference. There's such a difference between, because my firstborn had the reflux and the colic, and obviously the amount of puke that I've experienced in number two also has no, she does not have colic, praise be, but she does have the reflux, and the amount of puke that we deal with is just fascinating. And it's interesting because I have friends who on the reflux side are like, no, I don't think my baby ever spit up. Like I like really literally don't know. And I know there's a spectrum for that too, but for the crying piece, when you've got a baby, like, yes, of course they say like, oh, you're going to learn when the baby cries, this cry means they're hungry, and this cry means they're tired, and it's like, oh, great. Oh, so it's almost like an instruction manual that I'm getting. This is going to be
like
so
a baby language.
Baby language, right? And then your baby cries all the time nonstop and nothing will comfort, in your case, her. And you're already exhausted because she's not sleeping. I don't know about yours, but he would not let me put him down for 12 weeks of maternity leave. I mean, I remember taking a picture of the first time he napped in his crib, because I was like, look,
that's a momentous occasion.
It was huge for me. It was huge. And it was funny because this one, I brought her home from the hospital. We brought her home from the hospital, and she wouldn't sleep in the bassinet. She wanted to sleep in her crib by herself. And I literally built my private practice during my maternity leave because I had free time, because she was like, I'm tired, I'm going to bed, I'll see you later, I don't need you. Which, of course, on the other hand,
that's amazing.
My baby, don't you need me? But yeah, I mean, they just
my first baby, she just like was really, crying all the time. I was exhausted. I was a new mom trying to figure out who I was like after this
Yeah.
and how I was going to return to work. Like that's one of my biggest things is like, especially with the school district that I work for, I ended up owing them money
Uh-huh.
because I took too much time off. And
Yes.
it was like supposedly with the 12 weeks because what is it called? Like the time where
Short-term
you get
disability,
to no, when they
FMLA.
call it no, when you're supposedly getting to know your baby.
Oh,
What is it?
yes. Why am I drawing a
The
blank now too? Bonding time? It's not bonding.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, you
I'm
get
drawing a
it.
blank too. It's so funny. Like it's like
Yeah,
right
so
here hanging out in my brain, but yes.
yeah, so you get the, mine, both mine were C-section, so you get the time to recover for the C-section, and of course it was like longer because it was a C-section, whatever.
Right.
But then in addition to that, you get the bonding time, and
Uh,
so I thought, great, my job is secure. I don't need to worry about that. But little did I know that I like went through my time off, and then like the way that the district works is you have a certain amount of days that you have to work. So because I took so many days off, I owed them money. So for 5 months I didn't have a paycheck, and the stress that that causes
oh.
is a lot, especially when you have a newborn that's crying all the time, and it's first time
Mhm.
mom, first time putting her in daycare, and she's like this big, and you're just
Oh,
like, no, I don't want to put you in daycare. But what do? It's like
right.
America just needs to get better at
It's
maternity
so interesting
leave.
that we're having this conversation in this week where it's really these insane conversations are happening in Congress. And I saw this yesterday. I should have Googled because I didn't even think about it in combination with this conversation, but I saw like, don't legislators get 12 weeks of paid bonding time?
That's right.
So we as tax-paying citizens pay for you to have 12 weeks off mandatory as part of your contract as an elected official, yet you don't want to reciprocate.
Yeah, it's like it's okay for you, but I guess you don't think we should have the same.
Uh-huh,
And it's like,
uh-huh,
and even
uh-huh.
12 weeks is just insane. Like
Yeah.
12 weeks, you're just barely getting to know your baby, I think. And
Well, it's
like
very
you're
true.
barely getting into a routine, barely. Because I
Right.
remember like even, and that causes a huge stress with breastfeeding. Like my breastfeeding journey has been a difficult one. It's starting with my daughter. So I had cracked nipples and like a big old, she caused a crater that I had a long time that I needed to heal from that. And so, I mean, nobody tells you about these things. They just like make it look so easy, like breastfeeding is supposed to be this natural thing, but it's a difficult thing. It's a
Yes.
emotionally exhausting, physically exhausting. And it was like the thing,
Painful.
yes, painful for sure. And especially when they have lip ties or tongue ties, like my kids
Yes.
did.
Yes.
And so it's like, the stress. And then when you have to add pumping into that because you have to work,
Right.
my supply went
Oh no.
as
Yeah.
soon as I started with my daughter. With
Uh-huh.
my son, well, I kind of knew what I was doing and I had a better plan and I
Mhm.
became a cow. Because I love all this milk, but not as much as you. I've seen those pictures.
Yes, God bless. We finally got a deep freeze this weekend. So
Yes. That's
we've reclaimed
amazing.
our. What'd you
It's
say?
like that. It's amazing that way you can keep this baby alive on just breast milk. It's like,
I'm still pretty floored by that to think like the things that I see my 2-year-old eating, and obviously, I'm not going to give an egg frittata to a baby because she doesn't have teeth anyway. But it's like the fact that all of the nutrients that somebody might need, she literally does not eat anything else. It's so mind blowing
yeah.
to think that the body is able to produce such a thing, especially with formula these days. Like think of how much we've improved with formula since we were children, since we were babies, since formula was first invented, like all the nutrients and everything in it, and that's a human made item, and your body's like, nah, I got this, we're good.
I know. And
It's
it
feeling.
changes.
Yes, and it's interesting because you can see like it gets yellower if the baby was sick at some point when you were pumping because the nipple is able to sense that, and then it's just really very fascinating. But yeah, and it's funny. I should mention too, we know each other also because we worked together at the school system together in
Yes.
16 to 17.
You
And I
just couldn't
remember
stop following me.
I can't,
Stalker.
I know. And had we not moved to Houston, I'd possibly still be working with you and then just followed you
Yeah.
to the north side. But yeah, I remember you telling me that. And I remembered as being somebody who had not given birth to a baby. I just remembered thinking like, you owe money because you tried to
Yes.
hit, because you took time. What? And I just remember thinking, and that actually happened to me this time. And I don't know if, no offense to my HR rep back in Houston. I loved her as a human. I wonder if she just was doing it wrong and I didn't owe money, or they weren't taking track of it very well, or it was just, I know I remember writing in checks every 2 weeks for my insurance to stay because I had to pay that out of pocket. But this time there was so much less, like they were like, oh no, you used your PTO to pay for your insurance and you used this for that. And my last paycheck at my last agency was $105. Like,
wow.
which is not the same as owing 5 months back pay.
Yes. I mean, that
But
was stressful.
I remember you telling me that, and I just remember being so floored because these are just the things, like these are the things that we don't talk about, that we don't know about, that they don't discuss with, like, your agency, your school system, your hospital, whatever, doesn't tell you as you're preparing for maternity leave.
I know. And then when you're actually like in the actual hospital delivering your baby, you don't know, like at least I didn't know that there's separate costs between you and the baby.
Uh-huh.
And like you get 2 different bills. And it's like,
Yeah.
what? And it's
Yeah.
like, what did you say? And then it's like the anesthesia for you, and oh my goodness. And like you get billed for the weirdest things.
Uh-huh.
It's like
you need
why?
somebody to come in and be like, okay, here's a printout of your everything, and here's what you need to, and this is going to be, and this is why that, and and yeah, and we still are, because my insurance is different than my daughter's, and we keep getting these letters like they want to just make sure that there's no other insurance that might be able to cover something for. And I'm like, guys, no. She's like, please pay for this. The hospital, it's just 4.5 months old. Yes,
we're sure. We're pretty sure.
Yeah, it's so interesting, the things that we just don't. And like you said about the breastfeeding, and like I feel like we're making a turn around the corner here. And you mentioned in your intro that you said to me like about ending the stigma, and I think a lot of us are really, I think that's very important for mental health, especially with motherhood, parenthood, breastfeeding, chest feeding, all of that. I think you're just supposed to get it. You're just supposed to understand it. It's just supposed to happen. And I think people are starting to be more honest about it. Like you're seeing more pictures of the women in the diaper underwear holding their, and it's like, I didn't take that picture, nor did I post that. Well, I didn't take it because I didn't want it, but like, that's my own personal journey to not share.
But that is also like, it also goes to show like how ill prepared you really are when you are giving birth to this baby, and then they want you to leave.
And then they're like, okay,
I personally wanted to stay as long as possible because you got fed, you got a nurse that took your baby to do whatever, and like to have a few minutes of rest, you know, like when I was at home, I was alone. So I was telling my husband, why are you pushing for them to discharge me? Like, stop it. Yeah. Like, I really like it here. And that must sound crazy, but it's like, because you don't know how to use the pump. You're given one by your insurance. You don't know if it's the right one. I mean, I was given, now I know that the pump that I was using, that I had for my first child, was not the pump for me. It didn't empty me out. And so I think that's another reason why my supply dropped. But you don't know these things. You don't know how to put on this thing that like the wires and the flange, and like you don't know about nipple size. Like, when have you ever measured your nipple?
But that's so true. I didn't, and it came with 2. So of course you sit there and think for a moment, and you use your deductive reasoning skills, and you say like, oh, there's a 28 and a 26, so that means people's nipples must be different sizes, so I should try and see which one. But like, and I actually had a great, I have no notes on my experience at KU out here in Kansas, and everything about the university, or as at Houston Methodist at TMC, was great, except for the lactation consultant. I brought my pump, and it was not the brand of pump that the hospital used, and she was affronted. She was offended. She was plucked. How dare I? And like, my mom was in the room too. Like, this was before COVID with the first one, obviously. My parents were in there, and I was like, hey, I brought my so-and-so pump. Never pumped before, obviously. Would love it if you could just, check it, make sure I've got it set up right. Everything looks good. And she was like, well, we don't use that type of pump.
Yeah, they don't touch it. They
It's
don't
like,
even try to help.
they, long story, I could go on and tell you detail, but long story short, she would not, and then she wouldn't come back to my room. I actually asked for her to come back multiple times. We even were out walking the bassinet around. You know how they ask you to get up and walk a little bit? And we saw her and we're like, hey, we'd love for you to come back and just make sure everything looks good and and she would not come back.
Oh.
I did not see her again. So it was crazy. Whereas this, and that's not the situation. So many lactation consultants are just, I could sit here and talk again about how wonderful KU was. And we actually have a lactation consultant at my pediatrician's office now, but yeah, and it's just, you're just made to feel these certain ways, like, how dare you ask these questions, or how dare you not already know these things? And it's like,
And
how
I think that
one
doctors,
knows?
and I think doctors and nurses, and not, it's not their fault, but they're used to doing this for a living. Like, you do this every single day, but for us, it's our first experience. So we don't know what the hell we're doing. We have masters, we can figure it out, sure. But it's like,
yes,
just give me a heads up.
Yeah, and it's interesting because actually my husband and I were talking about this, and it's like parents these days actually have too much information. Like 7 different people who are air quotes experts have 7 very, very different opinions about how you should do it. And it's like, okay, but which one's right? And how do I test? And let me take a piece of each one and see, or whatever. But it's so much, and it's so difficult. And then you just kind of have to fake it till you make it. But that's a terrifying prospect when you're in charge of any human being.
That's exactly. That was really scary for me. Like, it's like you have this tiny human totally dependent on you, and you're like freaking out because you're just like, I don't know what to do. And it's like, and everybody has their opinions of what you should do, but it's like, that's even a stress. It's like, oh my God, who do you listen to? Who do you not listen to?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you not hurt other people's feelings? And how do you just say, hey, I just want to be alone?
Mm-hmm. What it is, it's truly so difficult because everybody, as family members, friends, people who you haven't talked to since high school, but you're friends with Facebook, on Facebook, want to tell you exactly how they did it and how you need to do it exactly like that. Versus, I've definitely had people ask me, I'm like, oh, well, this is what worked for me. But I make sure I very clearly say, like, give it a go. Like, I don't know.
Like, one of those things that I never knew about existed was the haka was the best invention ever. And
I have so much milk because you gave me a haka. You are the person who connected me to the haka world, and that is how I have so much milk before my kiddos even both went off to school because of the haka. So much appreciated.
I didn't know, like in 2016, I didn't even know that it existed. Apparently it did. And I was like, this is heaven.
Yes, it's amazing.
Yes, and it's so simple.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
and like anything you can save, you save it.
Yes, but it's like liquid gold. People who don't know, and people who know absolutely know. Like, don't touch my breast milk, stay away from me, don't knock this over, I will end your life. Like, right? But, and it's crazy because bringing it back to that identity piece, it's like, it's interesting with that moment when you're like, I am a mother now. I am a breastfeeding mother. I am a pumping mother. And like that identity, even like if I wanted, and of course not in 2021, where the heck am I going? But like in 2019, if I wanted to go to a Houston Dynamo game or whatever, like, okay, well, I'm going to have a beer, but I can't have 2, I can have like 2 beers over the course of the entire match, but I can't have too many because I'm pumping. And like, oh, do I need to bring my pump to this match because my boobs are going to get too full and then they're going to start leaking or they're going to be painful? It's like, it's crazy how your identity shifts so much in the choices that you make as being a parent, and how it's, and not that you want to divorce yourself from those things, but it's like, it is a 24-hour contemplation of this, but that, but here, but what, and that.
And it's true. It's so true, because you never get a break. And like, with anything else, you're just like, you get to go home or whatever, you get the time off. But this is a 24/7 thing, and it's like, it's a fundamental change in the way you look at yourself as a human being that is just totally different. It's like, you often think, that's my parents. My parents are the parents, not me. I'm still
Yes.
17 or whatever. But
Yes.
it's like, no, now you're the parent responsible for a human being. And like, when you think about it that way, it's like everything changes in your mind. It's like now you want to be so much better. It's like now I
Yes.
have to change the way I am. And I mean, it's just really overwhelming, I think. And when you're sleep deprived, it's just too much, I think, sometimes.
Mhm.
It's like just to
Yeah.
be.
This last week's episode was on sleep and sleep training, and or not, if you don't want to be, like it's so interesting. Like, we've all gone out, or not everybody, but like a lot of, people can reflect on their younger years when you're out partying or staying up watching a binge movie night with some friends over or whatever. And it's like, oh, I went to bed at 4 a.m., but I'm up at 9, I'm ready to go. And it's like, I went to bed at 4 a.m. and I'm up at 9 and I'm dying, but I was up
Yeah.
at 4 a.m. because I had a baby screaming, or, mine, like I said, he would not let me put him down. There was like a whole week where I held him in bed until 5:45 in the morning. Then he finally let me put him down in the bassinet, and then we both slept till 7:30. And then I had to get
Wow.
up and do it all over again. And there was one night where it was Austin, my husband was traveling for work, and it was like 11:30 at night. It was a Thursday. I remember it so vividly. And I was holding my baby, falling asleep on him. And I'm like, I don't know what to do because I don't have family in Houston. I know people who will listen to this podcast and be like, oh, you should have called me. I had to come over. And I'm like, I know, I was thinking of you. And I was like, I don't want to call these people, but I know that I could call and they would pop right over right now at 11:30 at night, and they would help me. And you just,
But
especially,
it almost it makes you feel like a failure. Like it almost like,
yes.
oh, many women have done this before, and I'm just like, what's
Mhm.
wrong with me? And so it's, yeah, I definitely have been there. And like where you're standing up and you're actually asleep and you're holding a
Ah,
baby. Like, how is that possible? I don't
ah,
know, but you
yes,
do it. Yeah,
yes,
like
yes.
I've been there. And it's like, especially with my baby, that is interesting because she didn't want to be held necessarily. She just didn't want to go to sleep. She would
Hmm.
pop up her little head and look at me and smile. She'd be the cutest little thing. But
Uh-huh.
then you're just like, just go to sleep.
Please.
It's like, just
You don't
sleep.
sleep, I can't sleep. What are you
I
doing?
know. I was like, because I'm going to be the paranoid first time mom. See how
Yes,
this works. And you try
yes,
to negotiate with this baby who really
uh,
doesn't understand what you're
yeah,
saying. Like, you become
absolutely,
this whole weirdo.
absolutely. It's so interesting that you mentioned that. Yes, like, please,
Yeah, and
just,
like,
just
and
like,
then like we talk about the grooming and the like how you look. I was like, who cares? Like,
oh my gosh, right? I
your
remember
standards go down the drain.
right. I remember one of the first times I actually like washed my hair, and it was such a big deal. And then my son immediately puked in it, but I was still like, but the rest of it's clean, and that's exciting.
And it's like all of a sudden it's okay to go to the doctor with your sweatpants on because that's all you could find.
Yeah. And kind of all that stuff fits comfortably, especially over the C-section scar. And like, yeah, it's,
Yeah. So I mean
it
your
is.
identity takes a it takes a toll for sure.
Well, and it is tough too, especially with, I mean, obviously you had your first in 2016, so social media was alive and well, but like, it is really interesting because before I had children, I did not post my laundry on social media. Like if I had, if I was angry about like the Red Sox performance in the World Series, I would post that. But if I'm worried about like an actual issue in my life, I'm not going to be sharing that on social media. I'm going to be talking to my friends and family about that as appropriate. But you do have these people who like expect something from you on your social media posts, or something that for me that's been really difficult is like, so I've had these losses and I'll post about that, but then if I want to celebrate something, somebody wants to remind me that somebody else has had a loss, or like the breast milk thing, like I shouldn't be so excited about it because some people can't breastfeed at all. And it's like, okay, I'm just celebrating my journey,
Yeah.
and this
It's
is
like
my
let me
journey.
be.
And heaven forbid you, my very first podcast is about gratitude virtue signaling, where it's like, heaven forbid you post any sort of joking complaint. I mean, people will read you down because how dare you be people can't have children. So how
Oh,
dare
yeah.
you be
And like,
upset that your daughter is crying into the night. You should be grateful that she's even in existence. And it's like, it's so interesting to
yeah.
deal with.
And that in large part is one of the reasons why I don't choose to post a lot, even though
Uh-huh.
my family is in California and my husband's family is in New Orleans and they want
Right.
to see pictures. It's like one of those things that you can never do right.
That's
And
right.
it's like, and like, so it's almost ridiculous how much shaming you go through. And so it's like I choose to not put myself out there because of that, and that's kind of sad in a way too, because it's like you're
Uh-huh.
not able to enjoy and
Uh-huh.
share in the joy, I guess.
Yeah.
As like, and we had struggles having babies, and it's like we understand the pain, but come on. It's like,
Right. Absolutely. And, and I think that there's something I remember, this is a little tangential, but it's on point of like, I appreciate when somebody wants to tell me something. Like if you genuinely feel like I posted something that smacked of ungrateful, and you were like, Meg, text me, call me, Meg, hey, that post that you posted about whatever, I feel like it came across really aggressive and I don't feel like you meant it to. Then tell me that. Like I remember one time when we got a new table from IKEA and I had put a picture of it, and it was right over like a banister railing sitting right next to it. And I was like, this is the perfect spot for it. And you texted me on the side and you're like, Meg, I know your son likes to climb. Maybe that's not a great place for that table. And I was like, I didn't even think about that. Thank you. You literally could have, and we have seen how much my child likes to climb. You literally could have just saved his life, but you didn't like grandstand. You weren't like, let me tell you how much better of a mother I am than you, Meg.
yeah.
How dare you not contemplate this? But you're like, I'm genuinely concerned for your child's safety. Maybe and I did, and I changed it and we moved it. And I think about that when I think about social media and how helpful it can be. But
Yes,
then
there's
not
ways to
everyone
do
is
it.
Jessica Skinner of the world.
But
And
you know what? I did know about that because from experience, like I
yeah,
did the same thing. I had like I don't know what I was, I don't know what it was, but it was some sort of jungle gym something. And the first thing that my daughter did was climb, and we had that like and you don't think about these things, but
right. Because as
or
a
you
grown up, you would know not to jump over a banister down from the second floor into the first floor. But as gosh, I don't even know how old he was. He was one, I don't know how many months, whatever.
yeah,
He just wants
and
to
that's
see
why.
how high he can climb
Yes, and
and
that's
how
how
high
I
he
I
can
kind of was
climb.
like I realized I was like, wait, is that because I honestly was like, okay, I'm gonna say this, and I hope she doesn't get offended because
See?
I know a lot of people like how other people responded to your other posts. I'm like, oh, I hope she
Yeah.
doesn't feel like offended.
Yeah.
And then it could have been skewed. I was like trying to reason. I was like, well, it could be a weird angle. So maybe I'm not seeing everything. Maybe she
Uh-huh.
doesn't have
Uh-huh.
it directly. But I was like,
Yes.
I can't live with myself if I don't say something. But
Yes.
I think there's ways to say it. And like, you don't
Uh-huh.
have to be like, well, studies have shown that
Uh,
50% of kids, whatever. It's like,
yes. Yes. And
like you
it's
can just be
crazy.
nice.
It's crazy that you would even have had to have thought about that with me, because how long I mean, gosh, we've almost known each other a decade. It's insane. Like to think that your daughter is 5. I rememre holding her when you were still
I
on
know.
maternity leave, and like, it's crazy. But yeah, and I just feel like not to re-harp on my first podcast, but like, seriously, that's what it's talked about. It's like people have ruined it. I just want to post pictures because my grandmother is on Facebook and lives near Louisville and she's literally not even met my daughter yet. So I want to post so that she can just see as much of my children as possible, and our lives too. She cares about us. But if I could, that's the tangent coming back too, right? Like,
Yes.
she also cares about me as a human. Like, how's your work going? And da da da. But in my mind, as the parent, I'm like, everyone just wants to see what my kids are doing. Like,
Yeah. And
yeah.
if you just don't want to see your kids right now, like if I don't want to see Megan's kids, scroll, scroll, scroll. Like it doesn't hurt anybody. It's like just
It
doop,
is.
doop, doop, doop.
So I need to memorize it because I feel like I'm gonna reference it so much. But the Ricky Gervais quote of like, social media today is like somebody seeing a billboard for guitar lessons and taking, like, those tear tab, like take the phone number and call, and taking the phone number and calling that person and yelling at them because you don't want guitar lessons. Like,
I know.
if you don't want guitar lessons, walk past the sign and don't take a number and don't ask for guitar lessons. Like, if you don't want to see my kids, scroll past it. If you don't like who I voted for in the election, scroll past, or if you don't like my post about the environment, scroll past it, right? Like, there are
like, it
so many
doesn't.
times when people post things and I look at the comments and I'm like, did you really feel like you needed to say that? Like,
I know, especially those people that announce that they're leaving, like, oh, I'm not going to be your friend anymore because blah 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 blah. I was like,
yes,
okay.
I have
It's like,
unfriended people for their comments on, especially about my children. I feel like as a human is my boundary anyway. I've done that in the past, but especially now with children, that is something that I've noticed more. Is like, if you're not here to support me, if you're not here to hold me accountable when I need to be held accountable, like if I post something that smacks of insincerity or whatever, I would hope somebody would be able to feel comfortable to say, like, Meg, I don't understand and I'd love to know more. Or like you being able to say, like, learning from experience here, just wanted to say, like, maybe don't put that right next to that banister. But like,
that's not a good idea. Yeah.
yeah. So, but I've had people who have said stuff and I'm just like, yeah, we're not friends. We're not friends in real life and we're certainly not friends on Facebook anymore. Click. Yeah, because I mean,
Sorry, feel like I have to mute myself because of the announcements at the
yeah,
school.
we're working
I
at
don't
a
know if you
school,
hear that.
right? A little bit. Everyone, it's fine. One day I'll get really fancy auto editing equipment, and we'll, take all of the background noise out of it. I think someone's mowing down the street from me, so I'm sure you can hear that too. It is what it is. Yeah, it's like, it's one of those things where I feel like in trying to maintain some sort of identity of like, I like to sew and craft, but now all of that basically revolves around my children too. Or I haven't rock climbed since I was pregnant with the first one. And I think, are you still there?
Yes,
Yeah, okay,
I'm
good.
back.
Okay, good. Trying to like the hobbies and the things that we do. Like I haven't rock climbed since
Oh, that's right.
and that's like we did that like 4 nights a week when we lived in Dallas, and now I haven't been since like 2019 or 2018, even when I was pregnant, and trying to figure out what that is. Like, how do I take the time to do things for me that are literally just for me and not feel that guilt of like, well, I could be making something else for one of the kids, or I could be making teacher appreciation week gifts for their, and it's like, or I could just sew this dress that I want to make for myself. But then, like, how do you deal with that? Not sewing specifically, but like, how do you deal with that when it's like, how do you make that time for yourself and not have that voice, that negative automatic thought of like, well, you could be doing something else with kids. Oh,
I think my internet is a little shady here.
losing it. Yeah. I was just saying, like, how do you silence that inner critic when sometimes you just want to take some time for yourself?
Oh Lord. It's hard. I mean, I definitely nap a lot.
Yeah.
It's like, so I mean, I kind of being mental health providers, I think we know the importance of taking care of ourselves. And so I think that's how if I'm not okay, then I can't be there for my kids or the clients that we see. So
Mm-hmm.
I know that even if that voice inside my head says, you need to spend your time doing something else that's useful, I fight with myself on that because it's like, no, you also need to take care of yourself. And so
Mm-hmm.
if I think I need a nap, I'll take a nap.
That's
And it's
amazing.
just
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously it's not when I have my kids around. Obviously it's,
Right.
and because of the pandemic, some of our amount of times that we had, we worked at home.
Mm-hmm.
So it was much easier to do that. So I actually also took up Pilates during
Nice.
the pandemic. So I mean, I forced myself because what were we doing? We were doing nothing. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we were at home, and especially for me, it was so lonely because I was working from home, and my husband, he has his clinic and he's working, and he had to actually leave the house, but I didn't. So for a long time it was just me alone, and I'm just like, I'm just sitting here eating, and that's it,
Yes.
seeing clients. So I was like, I need to do something that's not only good for myself but also for my mental health, because you start getting in a weird place. Especially, I think the pandemic really made me realize that you just start getting into this, like, at least for me, I'm very anxious. So I started getting in this weird, like, I'm afraid to go out because
Uh-huh.
there's this scary virus going on. And I was like, if I get into my head too much, I'm not going to want to get out. And, I'm going to be like the next hoarder. So I need to do something. So I decided to do Pilates and decided to like just take a break every day and just walk outside, even though
Uh-huh.
it wasn't like going out to restaurants or the movies or whatever, but just going outside and
Right.
breathing in the fresh air, which
Yes.
initially was scary because, this virus, we didn't know
Yes.
what it
Is
did.
the air
But
fresh? I'm not sure.
yeah, I know. So, I mean, it's a very weird time, but I feel like, in terms of identity, keeping up with your own mental health is really important. Like,
Right.
that's top.
Yes, absolutely. It's what's the expression? Like you can't pour from an empty cup, or something along whatever. We'll pick a cliche that kind of goes along those lines.
The
And it's
airline that they do is like put your oxygen mask first before you put
yes,
it on your
and
child.
it's such an appropriate mental health metaphor because you literally physically are supposed to put your own first, because if you pass out, you can't help anybody. But if your kid passes out while you're breathing, you can give them oxygen and then they will come back too. I mean, I'm not a medical professional, but like theoretically, if
Yeah,
all the kids pass out from lack of oxygen, you put yours on first, then you're able to assist people and able to be healthy in that way. And I love that that's like, literally like there's no argument there, scientifically speaking. That's what you have
yeah,
to do. And so it's difficult because, when you're feeling emotionally run down, it's the difference between like a broken leg. No one's going to ask you to get up and walk, but a
yeah,
broken spirit of some sort from, exhaustion, emotional issue, postpartum stresses, it's not visible. And
yeah,
so it's up to us to, advocate for ourselves of I need a break or I need this, whatever intervention that I need. Um,
yeah. And then you
absolutely.
definitely do get in that space sometimes where you can stay there, and that's like very important to realize that there is help out there. You do have that's why it's so important for us to talk about these things. It's like
Mhm.
you're not alone. You definitely aren't. You feel like you are in the moment, and at 3 a.m. when you're breastfeeding your baby, and
Yes.
it's like you do feel like you're alone. But
Yeah.
like to try to remain connected, like there's a group that I am a part of. I think it's Dallas County Moms or Collin County Moms, something like that.
Uh-huh.
And I met a lot of ladies that were pregnant around the same time as I was. And so
Mhm.
I maintained those friendships because we did text each other too in the morning when we were breastfeeding. And like,
Yes.
because you are up, you are
Yes.
definitely up.
Yes.
And
It's so
so
crazy for sure.
yeah, so those small things that you do, that's taking care of your mental health as well. I mean, it's not a
Yes.
therapy session by any means, but it is
But
a therapy in itself.
it is.
Just like
Yeah. It's
you're not alone.
absolutely to not feel isolated on an island by yourself in those moments. It's crazy to think about like it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm all alone. And it's like, okay, Collin County moms of who's up? And like,
Yeah.
I am. I literally, when my water broke, before my water broke, but when I thought I was having contractions, a girlfriend of mine had twins 2 months before I had my firstborn. And I was like, I don't know if I just really have like need a bowel movement or whatever. I was like, and she's like, well, I'm up feeding the twins. So keep me like, and so we were able to talk. She was literally able to talk with me about whether or not I thought I was in labor because she was awake at, 12:30 midnight after midnight. And
I know.
um,
And all of a sudden, your husband's become useless at that time.
yeah, we could do, I know you have to get going to a session soon. We could do part 2 on
I know.
emotional labor and working for free and feeling undervalued and
Yes.
the like
And like, because,
keeping
yeah.
the machine running and the things that other people don't
And like
recognize, like that
talking
you're
about
doing.
sponsorships
I know.
is our
Starbucks.
fuel.
Starbucks is not a sponsor of this podcast, but if you would like to become a sponsor, please give me a call. Yes, absolutely. And honestly, I would love to have you back on again anyway, because I feel like we have so much more we could talk about. But that definitely is one thing
I
where it's like,
know.
and it's not even intentional, it's not malicious. It's that sometimes people just the burden kind of falls on us or
I
we
know.
take it upon ourselves even, and all of these things that get done, and it's like, well, I don't know that you're doing them because I don't see you doing them. And then
Yes, like all of a sudden in like my life, I became like a control freak. I was like, oh, let me just do it. Let me just do it, because I don't know what's happening.
That's right. I mean,
Let me just do it.
I've always been super chipper, cheerful optimist, but I've also been very type A in my life. So it's not a surprise to hear me say, like, yes, I am very much like, this needs to go here and that has to go like this and da 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 da. It's become heightened as a parent for sure. It's like, that's not where those bibs go. But also when my babies just puked everywhere, the bibs, I put them there because they're easy to access. And then and it's like, it's
There's
not.
a reason for your insanity, or so-called insanity.
Yes, air quotes insanity for the podcast kids. Because yes, right, there's a method to my madness, because it's not like I just want it there because I want it there because I think it looks nice. No, functionally speaking, it needs to be there, and that's how I'm going to be most successful in life. But I sound like a crazy person.
Yes. It also makes you happy, so please.
And also too, honestly, I have to admit, like, there's not enough emphasis placed on, like, if it's something that's just going to make the person who just popped out a human one way or the other, like Ziploc baggied out in our case, a human, like, if it's going to just make them happy, just put the cups in that place instead of that place. Or,
yes,
it's like,
pick your battles.
Pick your battles, absolutely. Oh, look, we've already got podcast number 2 ready to go. I've got a whole list of topics that we're ready to talk about. I do want to let you go because I know you've got a session coming up. I need to pump and then have a session. So same track. I was wondering, I didn't know if you wanted to plug, maybe, I know you've already mentioned like Dallas County Moms on Facebook. Is there any sort of agency or charity or anything that you'd like to plug that the family can know about, that you're passionate about, or that you'd like to point some people in the direction of?
No, I can't think of anything right now, but I know for first time moms, Haka is a great.
Yes.
They have an Instagram, and
Yes.
they're really a great company altogether. They make all sorts of things.
Yes.
Great for first time.
Also,
moms.
not a sponsor. HAAKAA, not a sponsor, y'all. But I'm telling, first of all, again, they can call me too, but amazing, absolutely, Haka, yes.
And Baby Frida has a lot of amazing products. I mean, it's just like, oh, if we had known. And then also like a pump that I really am happy with, and took me like 3 pumps in my breastfeeding journey. That is an awesome pump. It's Baby Buddha. That's like so good.
I've heard good things about that one. Yes. And people don't give enough credit.
It's like this big. It's like a cell phone big. Like, it's really small, and it's wireless, but I mean, it's not like the fancy schmancy things that go in your boobies.
Yes.
I mean, what is this called? Bra. See, you lose your words in motherhood.
I think there is something to this whole mom brain thing sometimes.
Yes.
There's some of my quick recall is dampened a little.
I know. It's like your IQ goes down.
Yeah.
But it'll come back. It's okay.
Yes. Well, I can't thank you enough. Like I said, I mean, I don't want to force you into it, but I think we've already got our second episode ready to go with another set of topics.
Well, so I'd be happy to come back if it's like this. I'll chill.
I know, right? It's just a good opportunity to chat, get some stuff going, share some.
We could talk forever.
We could talk forever, and do. Well, thank you. I'm so excited. It's been such a pleasure to get to chat and catch up. And thank you for sharing your experiences with the family.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.
To see you and see your face.
Absolutely. Well, you take care.
All right. 13, something like that.
13.
We were both working at